Today's podcast is brought to you by Jerry Robinson's Market Barometer, a powerful tool for investors who want to avoid the next major market downturn. Learn more at marketbarometer.org.
Friends, welcome to Follow the Money Daily. This is the Friday edition of Follow the Money Daily podcast, a podcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial freedom. Hosted by myself, Jerry Robinson, author of the book Bankruptcy of Our Nation, publisher at ftmdaily.com. That's followthemoneydaily.com. I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host and wife and national director of the Christian Financial Advisor Network, Jennifer Robinson. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, Jerry. Well, it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We've had a busy week with this new daily podcast, but we have enjoyed every minute of it, and we hope you have too. Jerry, what have you thought about the week so far?
Based upon the response we've received from the folks, because we have been sending out a daily briefing now for about a year without a podcast, and the response we've received from the podcast, as we've been saying, has just been great. It seems like about 80% of the folks want us to continue this versus the daily briefing, and so I think it won out. So I think starting next week, you're going to see the official FTM Daily podcast rolling out. This has been a test this week, and so far, so good. So I've been real happy. I've been really happy. You've been seeing a lot of good responses as well. So I know we seem to be meeting the mark. I think people need information on this topic, and they need it regularly. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be timely.
And it needs to be in an easy to gather fashion. So not everybody can sit down and read a big article and check the website every day. But hey, you can download a podcast and listen in your car every day. Yeah,
30 minutes, unlike, I know some people have 3-hour programs every single day, and I'm not interested in that because most people don't have time for that. But for 30 minutes, absolutely. So glad that you're tuning in. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, or if you've just found us, you can bookmark our website, ftmdaily.com. And today we're going to be talking about, I told you we're going to talk about the petrodollar system. We're going to talk about it indirectly because I'm really going to dig into it here in the coming days on this podcast. But we're going to deal with it indirectly because we really have a major petrodollar headline in the news today. And that is this growing wave of violence that is spreading across the country of Iraq. All of the American blood, all of the American treasure spilt upon the country of Iraq, now threatening to go up in flames as a growing band of Sunni terrorists known as ISIS standing for the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, just laying waste to many different areas in Iraq, especially the oil fields of Iraq, gaining control over some of them. It caught the attention of obviously global investors because oil prices now are moving higher. They're at the highest levels they've been at all year. Equity prices got soft over the last few days. You've seen that, partially due to the fact that there is a lot of concern and fear over what's going to occur in Iraq. It became so pronounced that President Barack Obama actually this morning made a statement on it, because I know many people are wondering when they see this violence in Iraq, and now the Iraqi prime minister is asking the United States for direct military aid, calling for direct strikes upon ISIS in Iraq. And the response came from the White House earlier today, and we have just a short, brief clip of what President Barack Obama had to say. Roll the tape.
We will not be sending U.S. troops back into combat in Iraq, but I have asked my national security team to prepare a range of other options that could help support Iraq security forces, and I'll be reviewing those options in the days ahead. Unfortunately, Iraqi's leaders have been unable to overcome too often the mistrust and sectarian differences that have long been simmering there. And that's created vulnerabilities within the Iraqi government as well as their security forces. So, any action that we may take to provide assistance to Iraqi security forces has to be joined by a serious and sincere effort by Iraq's leaders to set aside sectarian differences, to promote stability, and account for the legitimate interests of all of Iraq's communities, and to continue to build the capacity of an effective security force. We can't do it for them. And in the absence of this type of political effort, short-term military action, including any assistance we might provide, won't succeed. So this should be a wake-up call. Iraq's leaders have to demonstrate a willingness to make hard decisions and compromises on behalf of the Iraqi people in order to bring the country together. So the United States will do our part, but understand that ultimately it's up to the Iraqis as a sovereign nation to solve their problems.
So there's President Barack Obama commenting on what's occurring right now in Iraq. If you look at some of the news that has been coming out about this ISIS group that is running roughshod over Iraq, you've probably heard something mentioned about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. That's been in a lot of the news headlines that I've seen. And I really want to talk about that just for a moment, because the Sykes-Picot Agreement took place in the final years of World War I. It was actually 1916. And the victorious Allies began partitioning the failed Ottoman Empire in a secret agreement that was known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And this agreement carved up the Middle East, gave France control over Syria and Lebanon, gave Britain control over most of modern-day Iraq, Israel, a few other areas around the Persian Gulf. And when it was created, it was a secret agreement. And no one even knew about it until the Russian communists during the Bolshevik Revolution actually discovered the paperwork and discovered what the British and the French had decided to do to carve up the Middle East. This caused major tension. Now let's put ourselves in their situation. Let's imagine for a moment that here in America, back in the 1700s, we were working together to form our nation. And secretly, Canada and Mexico had decided to divvy up the United States and to say that these areas are ours, these areas are yours, you'll have control over these. And then we were to find out later. Well, that's exactly what happened in the Middle East. These nations discovered what was being done. And much of what has been done in the Middle East has followed a divide and conquer strategy. In essence, when you carve up the lines on the borders in the Middle East, these early inventors of the modern Middle East map were sure to make sure that the borders went through really sensitive areas, to make sure that neighborhoods and families and individuals and people groups and cultures were completely separated by borders. And this threw the Middle East into a massive disarray. It's caused massive chaos. And so when the United States talks about how they're deeply concerned about the Middle East, well, they should have done something about that a long time ago. Instead, they have consistently sought to divide and conquer that area because of all the oil that's underneath the ground. I saw a bumper sticker several years ago during the Iraq War that said, "What is our oil doing underneath their sand?" And that certainly seems to be the attitude of many today regarding the Middle East, that this area has never really belonged to these people. They've always been underneath the control of Western forces. And oftentimes when Western forces have intervened, they've only made matters worse. Take 2003, whenever President Bush decides to send troops into Baghdad and decides to take down the strongman Saddam Hussein. Remember that when that happened, it came as a direct result of a meeting, and I think I told you this yesterday, but September 24th, 2000, Saddam Hussein emerges from a meeting with his ministers, declaring that the United States dollar would no longer be the currency used for all of Iraq's oil. Instead, they would use the euro. And of course, this immediately changed once the war took place and the troops came into Baghdad and overtook the city, and then they changed the system. And now all oil coming out of Iraq is priced in, voila, U.S. dollars. Well, for a period, it wasn't. It was priced in euros, thanks to Saddam Hussein. And so we know why we went in last time to Iraq. And now we have these Islamo-fascists who are running roughshod over Iraq. And remember President Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair saying how Islamo-fascism was the problem and that they were here to fix it? And then they talked about how they accomplished their mission. Well, Robert Fisk in the Independent UK has a stunning article today. Sunni Caliphate has been bankrolled by Saudi Arabia. And he makes the point that if Bush and Blair decided to go to war on Iraq to stop Islamic fascism, they absolutely, positively failed. Absolutely. And we have a link to Robert Fisk's article on our website. But he goes on in the article and continues to add that not only are these militants going underneath the name of ISIS, which again stands for the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, not only are these guys running through the country trying to take over much of what they see in order to create their own state and their own Islamic caliphate, but they're actually being bankrolled by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Qatar and even Turkey. So this is a very concerning story for the petrodollar system because, again, this puts the United States in a box. It puts Barack Obama in a very tight position as to how we're going to move forward from here. Now, I had told you about that Sykes-Picot agreement. You're going to see that in the news as you're reading. And again, that was really just the initial redrawing of the Middle East map in the wake of the destruction and failure of the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled that area for a long time. So now ISIS has taken control of Tikrit. They've taken control of Iraq's second largest city, Mosul. The Kurds, by the way, up north in Iraq, have taken control of the northern oil city of Kirkuk, which they consider to be their capital. And they're selling oil away to other countries, including Turkey, and they're doing it without the express permission of Baghdad. So Iraq is it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Right now, Iraq exports about 3 million barrels of oil per day, and much of that production is now underneath the control of ISIS. And this has obviously concerned investors. It's led, as I mentioned earlier, to a dip in stock prices recently and a jump in global oil prices. But when you take a look at northern Iraq, you'll find that ISIS has, in many ways, demolished the border that existed between Syria and Iraq, thus demolishing what was created in the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So ISIS is out to destroy and redraw the map of the Middle East. And if you look at how the U.S. has been responding to this, it's pretty telling. You know, they're obviously concerned by the advance of ISIS because they just recently gave $5 billion or committed a $5 billion counterterrorism fund to Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey specifically for this uprising. Now, the Saudis have been playing both sides. They're officially labeling ISIS as a terrorist group. They did that back in March. But ISIS is allegedly supported by the Saudis, and I mentioned Kuwait, Qatar, Turkey. So there's a lot of misinformation about this going on. So one of the things that I wanted to tell you on today's broadcast is that when you're listening to stories or reading stories about the Middle East, always be very, very cynical about what you're reading because so much of the history of the Middle East has been so diluted and so westernized that you cannot really get a good view of what those people are really dealing with if you strictly view it through Western eyes. If you listen to CNN or Fox News and they tell you what's wrong with the Middle East, they usually leave out so much history and they leave out so many facts that you really don't know what the real root of the problem is. Now, what makes ISIS so dangerous is not just its strength, because they are strong for their size, but what they're doing is they are exploiting the festering sectarian divide and the deep political and economic dissatisfaction that pervades this area of the Middle East. There's a lot of dissatisfaction among the people. They're not happy with the way things are going. They're not happy with the dictators and the brutal way of life. And ISIS, while they're not offering much different in the form, of course, they're bringing Sharia law and they're bringing all kinds of harsh rule. But they offer some sort of hope of a caliphate, a Muslim caliphate. And now ISIS is marching straight towards Baghdad. Now, if they take Baghdad, all bets are off. And Iran is absolutely positively going to do all it can to prevent ISIS from steamrolling Baghdad. Now, there's reports coming out, I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal, that Iraqi soldiers in Baghdad are actually deciding to wear civilian clothes over their military uniforms in the event that ISIS shows up and they need to flee. This is what is blowing many people's minds about the Iraqi police forces and the military. These guys are literally taking off their uniforms, dropping their cache of weapons, and fleeing with the general population as ISIS comes into an area. This is why you see ISIS now driving around in American-made Humvees. You see them using American-made weapons, all thanks to the weapons manufacturers that continue to proliferate terrible weapons around this globe. And they continue to pump them into the Middle East because, again, they are not concerned about the lives of the people in the Middle East. They're concerned about the oil in the Middle East. That's all they care about. That's all these military industrial complex folks care about in the Middle East. When I look at Iraq, when I look at some of these areas over there and I see the innocent people, I see the precious people, the children, the families who are just like you and me, who just want peace. They just want security. And the United States has done so much to harm this area over time, all because of their wealth that's in the ground. Numerous people have told us why we have gone to war in this area, and it's always because of oil. Now, Iran does not want ISIS to take over Baghdad because Baghdad contains some holy areas to the Shiite Muslim religion. But they're also very concerned about the holy Shiite cities of Karbala and Najaf. And ISIS has already decided to go to those areas, which they call polytheistic. They think that the Shiite religion is polytheistic. They do not like their Shiite brothers because ISIS is Sunni. And they approach Islam from a Sunni perspective. And so Iran, which is completely Shiite, and Iraq's government, which is predominantly Shiite, are tangling with this Sunni terrorist group that, according to Robert Fisk and many others, is being funded by the Sunni powers, i.e. Saudi Arabia, our best friend, and Turkey, and Kuwait, and Qatar. The Iraq government has appealed to the United States to launch surgical airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq. And so far, the United States has said, no. You just heard what President Barack Obama said at the top of this podcast during a speech today when he said that we're not going to send in troops. But that doesn't mean that we won't send in more weapons. Because how do you solve war? Well, everybody knows how you solve war. You just add more weapons. That's how you solve a war. How do you prevent violence? Well, you just add more weapons. That's how you prevent violence. Who actually came up with that philosophy? The weapons manufacturers. No, what do you know? How they always come up with the best logic. Let's see, I'm selling a bomb, and the best way for people to have peace is to buy my bomb. Oh, you only have 500 bombs. You need 600 bombs. That'll make it better. We've already pumped in tons of weapons into Iraq. We've spilt blood and we've spilt treasure in that country. How much more are we going to give? And why are we giving it? We're giving it, friends, for one specific reason. And it's called the petrodollar system. It is a system that holds up our economy. It is a system that has enriched us beyond our most wild imaginations. And it's breaking down. What's the aim? What's the goal of ISIS? What are they trying to accomplish? Well, as I mentioned before, their aim, their goal, is to fully restore a Sunni Muslim caliphate, just like they used to have during the Ottoman Empire, that reigned supreme, not just over the Middle East, but over the entire world. That sounds kooky. That sounds funny. What it is extreme. It's absolutely extreme, and this is what they're trying to do. Now, how should the U.S. respond? I'm curious. Should we send more military folks into Iraq to stop this? Or should we allow the Middle East themselves to solve their own problems? And it seems to be that President Barack Obama, realizing the political nature of this, the sensitive political nature of Iraq with the American people and how they do not want to hear that we're going back to war in Iraq, nor would they support that. So the weapons manufacturers are licking their chops as they think to themselves, well, they won't send troops, but they'll send weapons. So sadly, investors are positioning themselves within these weapons manufacturer stocks, getting ready for a nice payday. The petrodollar system that was created back in the early 1970s, which replaced the broken down Bretton Woods system that ended in August 1971, maintained the demand for the dollar by requiring all oil-producing nations to denominate their oil in dollars if they wanted U.S. blessing, if they wanted U.S. weapons, if they wanted U.S. support, if they wanted to not be invaded, quite frankly. And the petrodollar system that has worked so well and has created so much demand for our U.S. dollar over the last several years, last couple of decades even, is now under attack. It's under attack by the hands of Russia. It's under attack by the hands of Iran. It's under attack by the hands of Venezuela. It's under attack by those in China. Have I named any of our friends yet? Haven't got to our friends yet, have I? I'm still naming enemies. Because that's what you'll find. Is that you mess with the petrodollar system, your country will be maligned in our mainstream media. But if you stick with our petrodollar system, i.e. Saudi Arabia, you can fund ISIS all you want to. You can kill people and behead them in your country. You can take away rights. You can strip women of their rights. You can want a nuclear bomb. You can hate Israel. You can do whatever you want to do. As long as you price your oil in U.S. dollars, you're our buddy. So the Saudis say women can't drive. What do we care? The Saudis are supporting terrorists. What do we care? 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were Saudis. What do we care? Saudis are funding ISIS. What do we care? The Saudis want a nuclear weapon? So what? Everybody wants nuclear weapons. The Saudis hate Israel. So what? Everybody hates Israel in the Middle East, right? Oh. Price your oil in dollars, and it covers a multitude of sins. A multitude of sins.
Well, as Jerry mentioned earlier, oil prices are headed for their biggest weekly gain of the year. The price right now is at 106.53. And of course, the stock market, judging by the S&P 500, which is at 1935 right now, down from its Monday highs of 1955. So down quite a bit this week.
Yeah, and oil we expect probably to continue going higher. Natural gas even going higher than oil. So keep your eyes on that. Also, the S&P 500, yes, we do keep our eyes very closely on that index, as do most international investors who watch U.S. Stocks on a regular basis. At 1935, there's not too much to worry about here. We don't want it to go much lower. Otherwise, we might end up breaking our trend line that's up. So we'll keep our eyes on it. And for those of you who are subscribed to our Market Barometer, all of our FTM Insiders and our Trigger Trade Pro subscribers, all of you will receive an email as soon as these trends in the market change. So you'll be alerted in real time. If you're not currently a subscriber, you can do that online. Go to our website or just click on our store at ftmdaily.com. You click on the store button at the very top. You'll see all the different services that we offer. And that'll be a real nice introduction to those of you who are new to us. You'll find out all the things that we offer. Well, you know what today is? It's Friday the 13th. And you know what else? There's a full moon tonight on Friday the 13th. It doesn't happen again until 2049. So Jennifer and I are going to go out tonight and take a look at it. And we're going to enjoy this weekend. I want you to do the same thing. Have a safe and prosperous weekend. And I leave you with this final word, this time Psalms 27:1. where it says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" So stand strong, my friends. Have a safe and prosperous weekend, and we'll see you right back here next Monday. Until then, God bless.
All of the information contained on Follow the Money is strictly for informational and educational purposes. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud and Jay Peroni, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry and Jennifer Robinson do hold their insurance licenses and may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Jennifer Robinson is an investment advisor representative with Faith-Based Investor, LLC. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before making any financial